It's Tuesday, August 30. In the headlines, Trinidad and Jamaica signs MOU. Regionally, Guyana confirms a second monkeypox case. And in sports, Caribbean teams fighting for a spot in CONCACAF's Under-17 qualifiers. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I am Simone Absalom Gale. Jamaica and Trinidad will be working closely to enhance cooperation between the two nations. Gabriel Thompson-Jackson tells us more.
We were able to create a pathway to deal with trade complaints, and today we signed a memorandum of understanding on that cooperation. And that pathway, I believe, has been very useful for both our countries in improving trade relations. We today discussed important issues to do with the free movement of skilled labor, structured movement of free labor in CARICOM.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the two countries, who once had concerns over trade matters, have now signed a memorandum of understanding that provides companies with a transparent and predictable means of addressing export challenges. In 2016, Trinidadian Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley made an official visit to Jamaica to avert what he then called a trade war, which was being fueled by the constant complaints by Jamaican businesses about alleged unfair trade practices by their Trinidadian counterparts.
The case of Jamaica and Trinidad 6 years ago, we had issues with Jamaicans coming to Trinidad. We had issues with Jamaican goods coming to Trinidad. And I invited Prime Minister Rowley precisely for the point of view that the issues were not necessarily at the Prime Ministerial Cabinet policy level. Sometimes the issues are at the bureaucratic and administrative levels, and having a greater understanding, developing greater trust, building a partnership can help to unlock some of the institutional barriers to trade, travel, commerce, and finance. And so this is what this is about.
Mr. Holness also expressed his appreciation to Dr. Rowley for what he describes as, quote, backing up expressions with actual action in the implementation of the CARICOM dream, end quote.
The CSME is only going to materialize when you not only have free movement of goods, but also free movement of labor and free movement of capital. That allows for a more efficient allocation of resources. It allows for the expansion of trade and opportunities, and it brings life and meaning to this business of regional integration. We oftentimes want to see ourselves as competitors. That's healthy, that's natural, but there's another dimension. We have to also see ourselves as partners.
The two leaders have discussed the issue of national security with a major focus on crime and violence. Mr. Holness notes that Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago shared the notion that it is a public health issue.
It is important that the Jamaican public and the Trinidadian public come to a realization that countries like ours, at our stage of development with our economic profile and our culture and historical factors, do play a role and probably explains why violence is used so often, or is the choice of action to resolve conflict.
Mr. Holness was speaking at a joint press conference with Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, along with other officials from Jamaica, are in Trinidad to celebrate the Twin Island Republic's 60th anniversary of independence.
Thousands of Jamaicans in Western Jamaica are set to benefit from a newly established water initiative. Noting the difficulties in securing water reserves, Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Senator Matthew Samuda, commended those who worked hard to bring this initiative to fruition. Raquel Robinson has the story.
Senator Matthew Samuda was speaking at the recent commissioning ceremony for the Non-Perel, Retirement and Orange Hill Water Project in Westmoreland on August 26. He says the newly minted water project, which carries a hefty cost, will benefit more than 8,000 residents.
This project is a $475 million investment that will benefit 9,000 plus residents in the Wide and the Grill area. I believe it's 7 or 8 communities directly that will benefit.
He says the method to retain water for long-term use is not a cut and dry process, but in fact requires much attention to detail and varying degrees of variables to take into consideration.
There's a lot to consider as we look at water. There are a few elements that go into it. First element, as we mentioned, is rainfall, which is why the issue of climate change and environment is so important to the matter of rain. We're doing all that we can to ensure that we remain not just morally, but functionally leaders in the climate change space as we seek to prepare ourselves, both for what has happened and what is to come.
He also commends the workers of the National Water Commission, NWC, on jobs well done in the past.
And I want to just pause here to acknowledge the work that they're putting in. Nobody congratulates, but they do complain anytime there's no water in their pipe. So I think, not because I'm at an NWC function, but certainly because I'm seeing the work that they're doing to connect thousands of people who have had faulty connections over the years and how well they're performing, I think it's important to acknowledge them this afternoon. So VP Carr, Regional Manager, on behalf of the government, I wish to acknowledge you and your team for the work that is indeed taking place.
The improved system has the ability to process roughly 500,000 gallons per day, or 2.25 million liters, and is retrofitted with 2 storage reservoirs, 2 pumping stations, and transmission and distribution pipelines. Also in attendance at the ceremony were Member of Parliament for Westmoreland Western, Moreland Wilson, the Mayor of Savlamar and Councillor for Negril Division, Bertil Moore, NWC's Regional Manager for Westmoreland and Hanover, Jeffrey Smith, among others. Reporting for PBCJ News, I'm Raquel Robinson.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says members of the public who made deposits in the Catherine Estates, Bernard Lodge Estate, will be viable to receive their homes in the near future. He made the announcement while speaking at Housing Agency of Jamaica's handing over of Catherine Estates, also known as Bernard Lodge Estate, on August 26. Mr. Holness says the government made the decision available to investors to withdraw their deposits in the past, when the originally planned date for the project fell through. However, he points out that there are individuals who remain on the program.
There were some persons who said, no, I am leaving my deposit with you. So whenever the project comes on stream, I want to be a part of it. And I believe that up to this day, the HAJ still holds deposits for persons from that time. And we have fulfilled the commitment that if they left their deposit, they would be entitled in this new dispensation of the project to get their homes.
He says that in the past, the government reassessed the internal workings of the Housing Agency of Jamaica Limited, which previously saw a significant loss for the country.
We instituted a total revamping of the HAJ to the point where the HAJ is now no longer a loss-making entity. It is no longer a concern to the Auditor General. The reports have been fairly good so far. And the HAJ now does not pose a fiscal risk to the government.
According to Mr. Holness, Catherine Estates was originally planned in 2009 as a lower-income housing development in collaboration with a private partner. However, it was not materialized. after which the Housing Trust of Jamaica obtained environmental permits and other regulatory approvals and proceeded to commence construction and pre-sales of the units in 2013. Do you know that Jamaica's health system gets aid from international groups of which it is a part? One such group is the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. They are instrumental in Jamaica procuring vaccines, training, and other medical resources to keep us living healthy. PAHO is described as an international public health agency working to improve the health and living standards of the people of the Americas.
The goal of the policies is to strengthen cooperation among countries and horizontal partnerships within and across regions in order to proactively share health solutions that effectively and sustainably address common health problems. The role of PAHO's Secretariat is to facilitate and support the Member States in strengthening cooperation among countries and horizontal partnerships through three actions. The first, participating actively in international dialogue around South-South and triangular cooperation to advocate for health. Secondly, improving the existing support mechanisms for this modality of cooperation. Thirdly, brokering and knowledge sharing, matchmaking, in other words, by facilitating exchanges of good practices at regional and global levels.
Countries need to work together. We have in this region what is called Pan-Americanism, where we help each other. And historically, this region has a history, a successful history of tackling health problems. Countries prepare national action plans, and they exchange with other member states, and they help each other. We have human resources in this region, we have infrastructure in this region, we have excellent laboratories, and we have countries that have extremely good best practices that can be shared and imported to other nations in the hemispheric of the Americas. So there's no doubt South-South cooperation, North-South cooperation between countries of our region is the way to go. The time to help each other on this matter is very critical.
In the business report, ITEL is looking to boost its employee numbers. We have more in this story, plus other updates from Danita Rodney.
Customer experience provider ITEL is embarking on a massive recruitment campaign. ITEL says it is looking to hire 1,500 new employees across the 3 Jamaican sites in Montego Bay and Kingston over the next 4 weeks. This large-scale talent search will enable ITEL to meet the needs of its retail, travel, and hospitality clients who are preparing for the busy shopping season.
We also spoke, going back now to business, about bilaterally enhancing cooperation with regards to our process of business registration. And I think that is an area that could really create an explosion in trade and commerce between our two countries.
That was Prime Minister Andrew Holness. He was speaking at a joint press conference on August 29 alongside Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Keith Rowley. Mr. Holness goes on to say that there is no reason why companies in both countries should not be registered with each other, and says that he plans to work on making that happen.
There is absolutely no reason why a company registered in Trinidad and Tobago should not be noticed as registered in Jamaica and vice versa. And so when we go back, we will be looking at our respective legislation, which, by the way, a process already exists in CARICOM, and the discussion has already begun but Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago would probably be more aligned and more advanced in terms of legislation that could move the process forward by us enhancing and fast-tracking that bit of cooperation.
In market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Monday, August 29, the US dollar sold for an average of $151.61. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $116.38. The pound sterling traded for $179.58, and the euro sold for an average of $152.62. On the stock market, the JSE index declined by 3,398 points to close at over 300,000 units. The junior market index declined by 7 points to close at over 4,000 units. The combined market index declined by 3,242 points to close at over 300,000 units. And the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 4,970 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 120 stocks, of which 49 advanced, 48 declined, and 23 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Stocks declined for 1834 Investments Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Verbal Preference, Epley 7.50% Preference Shares due 2024, and Epley Limited 5% Preference Shares. The overall volume leaders were Grace Kennedy Limited with over 10 million units, Trans Jamaican Highway Limited with over 5 million units, and Mailpack Group Limited with over 2 million units. For regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Clico Investment Fund was the volume leader with over 3,000 shares, followed by Calypso Macro Index Fund with a volume of 108 shares being traded. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Government of Barbados Bond Series B was the volume leader with over 12,000 shares. They were followed by Epley Caribbean Property Fund Value Fund with 5,000 shares, and Cave Shepherd and Company Limited, which traded 63 shares. In market data for oil prices fell by more than $3 a barrel on fears that an inflation-induced weakening of global economies would soften fuel demand. Brent crude fell $3.81 to $101.28 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude was at $94.12 a barrel, down $2.89. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Denita Rodney.
In regional news, exactly 1 week after Guyana confirmed the presence of its first monkeypox case, a second case was confirmed. This was announced by Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony on Monday during his daily health update.
Last Monday, exactly 1 week ago, Guyana confirmed the presence of its first monkeypox patient, a 57-year-old man who resides in Region 4. This Monday, Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony said that the country's second case has been confirmed after numerous people reported spotting skin rashes about their bodies. He made the announcement during his COVID-19 update on Monday.
So we have diagnosed a second person with monkeypox. That person is now at the Ocean View Hospital receiving treatment. The person is stable, and we have started doing contact tracing for that person.
The health minister did not provide additional details on the second patient, however. The newsroom was reliably informed, though, that this patient is a woman in her 30s. She did not travel recently. With the new case, the health minister advised people to take the necessary precautions to keep safe.
Monkeypox, once you are next to somebody who is infected with monkeypox, especially in the period when they have skin rashes and they have these pustules that are on the skin, if you're in close contact with that person and you have touched that person or you've been cleaning these pustules without any protective gear, like gloves and things like that, then the chances are you are going to get infected, because this thing spreads with close contact to someone who would have been infected with monkeypox.
Importantly, Dr. Anthony explained that people who may have recovered from chickenpox are not immune to monkeypox. As such, he pleaded with all people to diligently adopt the necessary precautions to stop the spread of the virus.
In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the government has received a counteroffer from dismissed teachers outlining their demands for re-employment. The revelation was made by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves while speaking on NBC Radio.
Clearly, the government, the cabinet was advised on this matter by the chief medical officer, and we are enjoined by law to be advised by the chief medical officer, and we can only reject the chief medical officer if we have real grounds to reject that advice. I can't go and take advice on this matter from teachers who are not qualified to, or anybody else for that matter, to provide advice to the cabinet on that issue. Those two issues, the chief medical officer and the health services subcommittee of NEMO would have to give the advice different than what they've already given upon which the cabinet has acted.
Yes.
So those are points 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the fifth one is that they want to be reinstated. This is their fifth point. And to be given their salaries and compensation for the months they have been out. Well, that's not going to happen. That's what the court case is about. I have said that would be at the same point. Save and except if a post is not available. Let's say, for instance, a person was a principal in a primary school and you fill that post already. You can't have two principals in the same school. So that person would have to go to the next best job. But the difference in the point scale is not going to be significant because many of these persons have a lot of years in the service. So that would be a case-by-case situation. For those for where there's no post, like I just give that example in relation to the principal, they want to know which law. Well, the law is clear that your previous service would be added to your service as you get employment after your abandonment. And if there is any requirement in any particular case for us to have any other legislative intervention, that intervention would be done.
In sports, the 2022 CONCACAF Men's Under-17 Championship qualifiers kicks off on Tuesday with 10 teams, all hoping for a winning start to draw closer to the 2023 CONCACAF Men's Under-17 Championship in Guatemala. All 6 teams in Group A will take the field, beginning with the Bahamas and St. Martin, followed shortly thereafter by Bonaire facing Guyana, and then Bermuda squaring off with British Virgin Islands. These first 3 matches of the day will take place at the IMG Academy in Florida. The attention will then turn to Group C at the Estadio Olímpico Félix Sánchez in the Dominican Republic, where the Caribbean rivals St. Kitts and Nevis and the Cayman Islands will duel, followed by host nation the Dominican Republic, matching up with Dominica. Wrapping up their summer of cricket, West Indies once again lost to New Zealand. Looking back at the series is cricket commentator and executive producer of Line and Length, Barry Wilkinson.
Quite unfortunate, Andrew, but the reality is that they were playing against the #1 ranked team in the world. You have to look at that as a major factor. And their inexperience showed a lot. The West Indies still have not found a good strike bowler. They need 3 or 4 bowlers that can bowl 10 overs for at least 30 runs less or get some wickets. They haven't found those 2 or 3 bowlers. While they have Shea Hope, who is still perhaps a world-class batsman with 13 centuries, some of the batsmen still are very inconsistent, and you're looking at some good individual performances here and there, but they have not meshed together well enough to consistently beat a top team like New Zealand, who came here with Kane Williamson and Tim Southey and Trent Boult. They came here to win, and they came here with a very good team. I mean, even Williamson dropped out because of a quad injury, and Tom Latham just fitted in like if he was meant to be there. So, having said all of that, New Zealand were a much better side, and they are a top world team. That's why they're #1.
When asked if the West Indies identified best ODI team, Wilkinson had this to say.
I would stick with the nucleus of the squad that just played and perhaps make some changes. I don't think Casey Carty is versatile enough to be in the team. But I don't think he's good enough a batsman to hold down and cement the play. I think you need some versatility there. I'm very tempted to try and continue with Odin Smith and still have Ramira Shepherd in the setup, because I believe that they're transformational players that can be utilized in roles that Casey Carty can't. Casey Carty can't give you 10 overs. Shepherd or Smith can give you 7 or 8. And they can also come and surprise you in the latter part of the innings. Look what happened in Jamaica when they put on 60 runs in no time and almost brought the West Indies back to winning the match. They lost by 13. So I think you need to have some players that can give you some versatility, and unfortunately Carty doesn't. So I will be only tempted to include those two in the squads, and I will work with this squad as a nucleus, because these players are the ones that want to play.
Mr. Wilkinson was speaking on the weekly aired cricket show Line and Length with host Andrew Seeley. We reported yesterday that the final of the men's 60 was captured by St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots. You may recall, Knight Riders batted first and were bowled out for 84 in 9.3 overs. The Pats in reply made 85 for 3 off 9.4 overs to win by 3 wickets. And that's the news. Thanks so much for joining us here on PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.